I never thought I'd see the world again, let alone witness something so devastating it would cost me my life. For years, I lived in darkness, both literally and figuratively. The accident that stole my sight had taken so much more than my vision. It robbed me of my independence, my confidence, and at times my hope. But Ethan, my husband, was my light. Or so I believed. Ethan had been my rock after the accident. He'd taken care of me, supported me, and made me believe that love could conquer any obstacle. When I was told about a surgery that could potentially restore my sight, Ethan was my biggest cheerleader. He held my hand through every consultation, every doubt, and every fear. "We'll get through this together," he would say, his voice filled with unwavering determination. When the bandages finally came off, and I blinked against the harsh light of the hospital room, the first thing I saw was Ethan's face. His smile was radiant, tears glistening in his eyes as he whispered, "Welcome back, my love." In that moment, I thought nothing could ever tarnish the bond we shared. But I was wrong. Horribly, heartbreakingly wrong. The days following the surgery were a whirlwind of rediscovery. Colors, shapes, and faces that had faded into memory came rushing back to life. Ethan was by my side, guiding me, helping me navigate this new old world. But as my vision sharpened, so did my awareness. I began to notice things I couldn't have before. Subtle changes in Ethan's behavior, lingering glances at his phone, late nights at work that stretched longer than they should. At first, I dismissed my suspicions as paranoia. After all, Ethan had been nothing but devoted to me during my years of blindness. Why would he change now? But doubt has a way of planting itself in your mind, growing roots that twist and tangle until you can't ignore them anymore. I started to watch him, not just with my eyes but with a clarity I'd never had before. One evening, as Ethan showered, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at it, my heart pounding. The message was from someone named Claire. The preview read, "I can't stop thinking about last night." My stomach churned. I told myself it could be innocent, a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew. The days that followed were a blur of suspicion and heartache. I tried to confront Ethan subtly, asking about his work and his friends. He'd smile, kiss my forehead, and assure me everything was fine. But his reassurances felt hollow, his touch colder than before. I started to feel like a stranger in my own home, trapped in a web of lies I couldn't yet prove. And then came the night that changed everything. Ethan had gone out, claiming he had a late meeting. Something about his tone, the way he avoided my gaze, told me he was lying. I decided to follow him. It was reckless, desperate even, but I needed answers. I needed the truth, no matter how much it might hurt. I trailed him to a cozy little restaurant on the edge of town. Through the window, I saw him sitting across from a woman. She was beautiful, with long, flowing hair and a laugh that seemed to light up the room. They leaned in close, their hands brushing in a way that was far too intimate for mere colleagues. My chest tightened, the air around me growing thin. But I couldn't look away. As they left the restaurant, I followed at a safe distance. They walked to a nearby park, their laughter carrying on the breeze like a cruel taunt. And then it happened. Ethan stopped, cupped her face in his hands, and kissed her. Not a fleeting, mistaken kiss, but one filled with passion and familiarity. My world shattered in that moment, the pieces cutting deeper than any blade ever could. I stumbled back home, my mind racing. Anger, betrayal, and despair battled within me, each one threatening to consume me entirely. I wanted to confront him, to scream and demand answers, but I also wanted to understand. How long had this been going on? Was it my blindness that pushed him away? Or had he always been this person, hiding behind a mask I was too blind, literally and figuratively, to see? When Ethan returned home, I pretended to be asleep. I couldn't face him. Not yet. The next morning, I decided to gather evidence. If he was going to betray me, I would make sure he couldn't deny it. I searched his phone, his emails, even his jacket pockets. What I found confirmed my worst fears: messages, photos, even receipts for hotels. The betrayal was deeper and more calculated than I had imagined. But what happened next, I could never have anticipated. I confronted Ethan that evening. I showed him the evidence, my voice trembling as I demanded an explanation. At first, he denied it, his face a mask of feigned innocence. But as I laid out piece after piece of proof, his expression darkened. "You don't understand," he said, his tone cold and defensive. "You were gone for so long. I needed someone." His words cut like a knife. Gone? I had been blind, not absent. I had been here, fighting to rebuild my life while he sought comfort in someone else. My anger boiled over, and I demanded he end the affair. "If you ever loved me, Ethan, you'll choose me," I said, tears streaming down my face. For a moment, I thought I saw regret in his eyes. But then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and I knew he wouldn't choose me. He had already made his choice, long before I regained my sight. Desperate to salvage some semblance of dignity, I packed a bag and told him I was leaving. He didn't stop me. He didn't even try. As I walked out the door, I felt a strange mix of liberation and despair. I had lost the man I thought I loved, but I had also found something else: my strength. But Ethan wasn't done with me. A few nights later, as I was settling into my new apartment, I heard a knock at the door. It was Ethan. His face was pale, his eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't place. "We need to talk," he said, stepping inside before I could protest. What followed was a whirlwind of accusations, apologies, and manipulations. He claimed he had ended things with Claire, that he wanted to make things right. But his words felt hollow, his actions driven more by guilt than love. I told him it was too late, that some betrayals couldn't be undone. But Ethan wasn't ready to let go. "You don't get to leave me," he said, his voice low and dangerous. The next few weeks were a nightmare. Ethan's attempts to win me back turned into something darker. He would show up unannounced, his mood swinging from pleading to threatening. I began to fear for my safety. The man I once trusted, now a stranger I couldn't predict. And then, one fateful night, everything came to a head. I was returning home from work when I noticed a car following me. My heart raced as I tried to lose it, but it stayed on my tail. When I finally reached my apartment, Ethan was there, waiting. His eyes were wild, his demeanor erratic. "You've ruined everything," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "You couldn't just let it go, could you?" I tried to calm him, to reason with him, but he wasn't listening. The last thing I remember was the sound of shattering glass, the cold touch of metal, and Ethan's face twisted in a mix of anger and sorrow. And then, darkness. I woke up in a place I can't describe, my body weightless, my mind free of the pain and fear that had consumed me. I don't know what comes next, but I do know this: I will not be silenced. My story will be told, my voice will be heard, and Ethan, he will face the consequences of what he's done.